Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Conversation with Masters on Aging in a Time of Consciousness. So this series is about an intention to begin to reframe the conversation about aging. Everyone on this call is an enlightened master who agrees to be on this call to begin this new conversation about aging in the time of consciousness. We're not saying we have all the answers, yet we are interested in starting a new conversation, a paradigm shift, a new higher perspective around our human agreement around aging. All that means and all that it doesn't mean. You can contact any of these masters that are participating. Some of them share their gifts publicly and they have their websites, so feel free to reach out to them if you resonate with any of them. And so we're going to start. So this is a 4-part series. This is part 1. And this part is looking at aging from a new perspective without coming from lack, without coming from judgment, without coming from our human frailty or trying to fix something. Frankly, I think we could talk about this conversation in all 4-part series because it's hard to look at aging or talk about aging the way we do now without it being a negative thing. And so I think before we can go moving towards what the next step, we need to sort of have a discussion about how we can talk about aging where it's not coming from lack. There's something wrong, it's a bad thing, we don't like it, and so forth. So that's where we're going to start the conversation. So who wants to start first? Francesa?
I would. Yes. I thank you for starting this conversation. I find it right up my alley because my company is called innerbeautyhealing.us, and that's exactly what I'm about. It's about understanding the inner beauty, and inner beauty never ages. So I once wrote this blog, and that's what I wanted to share with you about specifically aging and specifically the body. So we are born, we're brought into this world in a beautiful little package called the baby body. And the baby body is adorable, cute, and it has to be. Because if it wasn't, we might throw it out with the bathwater because it is crying, it's making life difficult and makes you not sleep as a mom. So I'm like, if it wasn't so cute, and that's true with all, being, they're so cute and adorable. And as the body progresses, you go through adolescence, and adolescence is about this body that has super duper strong energy that's actually changing on a molecular level. It's growing, it's creating muscles, it's creating, hormones. And that is actually showing the awkwardness in this transition. Then you have the youthful body, which is the one that's made for fertility. If this body wasn't so beautiful, we would have a hard time with procreation, and then we move on into the bodies that we perceive are not as beautiful because suddenly it's taking on an image that doesn't reflect youth and vitality. And why that is an issue is because youth and vitality is associated with survival. So we have connected these dots that survival means youth, and it's also echoed in like movies, everything has to be youthful and everything it has to be that because it has to do with survival. And so we worry that the body is aging or becoming different. And in its difference, it's actually becoming more wise and more beautiful. And so we put judgment on it and we put limitation on it. And we say, this is not good because we potentially will go to the end, which is death, which we generally, I think people fear. And there's a big group consciousness of fearing around death. I personally think it's a wonderful transition. So then we have middle-aged body. And the reason the body starts looking more like that is because, especially towards the end, is that we wouldn't want to make the transition. If, that's why it kind of, sometimes I have, at least from my observation, we get so wrapped up if you hear somebody is really young and dies because it never managed to get to that transition, that point of fulfillment, which our older bodies represent. So if it was adorable and cute, like the little baby, we wouldn't want to do the transition. So the body actually works with us to help us do the transition towards, you know, our change. And if you can see this change as beautiful, it's miraculous. So to me, you know, I always looked at National Geographics and I love the pictures of all the wrinkles and the joy that came out of those phases. And I'm like, why would we not love this? We love those pictures. Why can we not see that in ourselves? It's only because we're taught differently to view things and frame it from a, and as I said, I think it has a lot to do with the survival mechanism in us, but there's probably more. But anyway, that is what I see in aging. And that's why I really like this conversation, because it opened the topic, which I am a passion about, because to me, every stage of life is beautiful. It's just about how you see it and perceive it. And as you put so nicely, the limitations that we draw within that framing. So I hope that made sense.
That was so perfect. I don't mean to step on your toes, Sandy, but just as a, you know, feedback from that is like, I love how you presented that, how it resonated, certainly. And I'm aware of this book for years already, although I've never picked it up because my dad had it. I think I gave it to him, in fact, called Aging to Saging. And that's been out for decades. And I'm taking a gander at Amazon soon to see what wisdom was in that book that I offered to my dad when he was probably my age, to see what I can also learn from that. But, you know, I think the way you expressed it from the aesthetic point of view, from the body point of view, it's a wonderful reminder, because I think that a lot of what we take away in terms of a more limited, lack-based viewpoint, when we look in the mirror and, you know, there are wrinkles here and, you know, chins here and so forth, and we don't identify with that as well. And, you know, that having that correlation, that reminder that you've just reminded me, because I never consciously had those thoughts, but it's beautiful. And how you can look at these things so differently, because as you say, there's such beauty in wise women and men, and, you know, it's like we all appreciate that, but when it's us, we don't see it. And, you know, I've had people call me beautiful recently, and I'm like, can't you see all the pandemic weight that I put on? You know? And that's the kind of feedback we give ourselves. So thank you, Francesca, for that. I so appreciate having heard from you about that.
Thank you for being open. You know, that's all it is. It's about being open. And you know, the reason I at least see why it is so difficult is because that it's so reinforced by so many things around it. And it's not really, you know, I've had to come through like, oh, why do they keep telling me this stuff what I don't like to hear and I don't think is true and I don't think is honest? I'm specifically talking about media. And I realize that they're just doing what they think the tribe, the group consciousness needs, which is really focusing on survival. And I'm like, okay, I get that, but there is more.
And there is more. And I think, and that was beautiful, y'all, what you shared. And so I like what you talked about, Francesca, from the standpoint of like, this is what it's about. This is what aging's about. We can look at this way. And I think that, okay, so what are the ways that instead of in lack, we can start, you know, how can we pass lack? So somebody says to you, oh, how old are you? and you say, and then people react, whether you're 20, whether you're 40, whether you're 60, 80, 90, people have a reaction to that number. You know, we're defining things. And then if somebody, you know, people start, like you said, feel bad about themselves as they age sometimes because we're not as valued, you know, in the media or in society and so forth. And so even when we say the words anti-aging is coming from lack. And we talk about, we're trying to fix aging. I've got to go get this done or that done because it's bad. That's coming from lack, where we're saying it's a bad thing about aging. And does it need to be a bad thing when we talk about aging? I don't think so. What do y'all think?
Oh, well, I don't think so. It doesn't sound true to me, but you know, that has been the framing, which I believe we are reframing.
Yeah.
And anti means war or against.
Of course it does.
So it'll automatically
itself is like negative, right?
And also, you know, the media is selling things. And if they make money by selling the idea of youth and the fact that we're not beautiful or vibrant in the age that we are, then that's a way that they can create more demand. Same with weight, all these things. I feel like it comes back to us really loving and accepting ourselves. You know, I got a little channel myself before this, because I was like, well, what do I have to say about this topic? My experience has been like when Sandy, you said, you know, when you say how old you are, then there's a reaction. And I noticed that as I've been, you know, aging and I've decided to allow my gray to come through, that people respond to me differently. And I felt like in the collective, like my value goes down when somebody thinks I'm younger than I am. And then I tell them how old I am. They're like, oh, and then suddenly I've been switched to a new box. And so that was something like, especially like right around 45, I noticed that starting to really come in. And one of the things that I have learned over the years is that our cells are listening to us. And when we bring awareness to that conversation and we talk to ourselves in a way of really supporting our cellular structure to do what it's here to do, which is it's self-healing. You know, it's taking command from our consciousness, from whether we're conscious of it or not. So I find that what stories am I feeding my body? You know, what stories am I telling myself? Like when I'm in a conscious relationship and I'm talking to myself, then the results are clear. It's clear. There's a vibrancy. And then when I slip into an unconscious place and maybe I say, oh, you know, wow, oh, what's that? You know, then that immediately is telling a different story to myself. So I find personally that awareness is a huge piece in the aging process, in that it's like, for me, I actually love and accept my body more now than I ever did, you know, through my 20s and teens and, you know, the younger years. Even in my early 40s, and I was in excellent shape, and yet I never, like, there was stories that said, you're never good enough. And what I found to be the most freeing is actually clearing those stories out and allowing myself to really acknowledge that I'm actually magnificent, and that my body is self-healing. And I even, you know, I remind my body all the time and appreciate that. And I find that is a really different engagement that I'm having with my aging process. And it's less about looking in the mirror. I don't spend a lot of time doing that. And I don't tend to tell people how old I am, in that it's just a box and it becomes this limitation.
Mhm.
Whereas when I just show up as me, and I see this with other people too, it's like when they show up, it's just like the tree in the forest. You're not going, well, that's wrong with her, that well, how he has this. You're just like, oh, there they are in the magnificence of who they are. And
So you're
and keeping,
it starts with us
yes, absolutely, in our consciousness.
in our consciousness. You know, and just I want to, so our series 2, one of the things we're going to talk about is how old am I and does it really matter? And I really want to delve into that too.
Okay.
A lot more the next one. Talk about how we answer that, you know, how we talk about the question about, because the numbers I don't think defines anyone, which we'll get into that. We'll get into that more later. But I like that way you contributed to us, that yes, it starts with us and looking at it and having completely different, not looking at it ourselves from lack. Mandy, were you going to say something, Mandy?
Oh, no, I love that. I think that's all so beautiful. And the word regeneration has come up so much with me lately, just that the body is so wanting to regenerate and is regenerating itself. And I was led through a channel, I don't know, it's probably been a few months back, where I was channeling, I was like tapping into the consciousness of every internal body part, all of the unseen. And the guidance was coming through, and it said every organ within your body is ready to ascend with you. And it's all wanting, you know, your heart is ready to ascend and feel into that consciousness. And it's so wonderful, just this ability to regenerate. And I just heard this morning, this kind of quote, and it said, the physical body was used and previously as if it had no soul. And if you look at that, that pretty much kind of defines so much of our world. We didn't always treat our body as if it had a soul in it. And now we're starting to have this connection. So I think this regeneration, it's just such a beautiful, beautiful thing. And can you hear me okay, Sandy? I might be breaking up a little.
Actually hearing you fine. It's great, Mandy. Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay. The other thing I was going to say, I was reading a book. It's called Anna, the Grandmother of Jesus. One of like the most many of you, okay, have read that and talking about, you know, Anna's. Say that again.
Rory recommended that to me recently.
Oh my gosh, Sandy, that will go down as probably one of the top books of my of my spiritual journey. But really, to tap into, you know, how Anna, for example, was able to, you know, what she did to regenerate her body over and over, you know, was just. It was so fascinating to me. I think that there's a lot we can learn, and that it feels as though that consciousness and those abilities are starting to come into us and come through us now, that remembrance of that. So anyway, this all feels so very exciting and very timely.
Awesome. I love that, Mandy. And yeah, Troy recommended that book with me. I'm not quite finished, but I'm almost finished. So Ahmet, you raise your hand next.
Yes, to complete maybe Mandy's speech, you know, I have been channeling about a couple of months now, and I have been having very good experiences with channeling archangels, ascended masters, Palladians, dragons, trees, flowers. And I've been thinking recently, okay, Ahmet, you have been doing a very good job channeling archangels, ascended masters, Palladians. Have you ever channeled your body? Maybe you can channel your body. Have you ever channeled your kidneys? Have you ever talked to your kidneys? Maybe your kidneys want to talk to you. Have you ever channeled your knees? Have you ever channeled your arms? I think communication with our bodies is very essential. Channeling with our bodies is very essential. Now it is perfect time for us to focus on our ascension process, to move to the new paradise. There's a good chance for us, which never happened before to any civilization, to have a choice of taking our physical bodies with us during ascension. So that's a great news. So I am going to ascend and my body is coming with me. I love that news. I love that news. I'm not gonna leave my body here, and I'm gonna leave my body. I'm gonna say goodbye to my body and then go to another dimension. Now, this is a great news. First time ever in the human history that we can ascend with our physical bodies. So what does it mean to me? Aging stops here. There is no more aging. Now we have the power of renewing our DNAs, our cellular system, and then choose the age that you want to be, 35, 25, 20, maybe 75, and back to 55 again. So we are very, very lucky to, in a time like this,
In the time of
we are
consciousness.
so lucky to have bodies. Absolutely, absolutely, in the time of consciousness. So we can ascend with our bodies. So for me, I am very happy. I am not worried about aging anymore.
I love it.
Yay.
Thank you.
I know, and even right now, I feel like I can be whatever I want. So, so awesome. Thank you, Sophia.
Pleasure.
I know you.
Mandy,
your hand up
I
here.
remember having a conversation with the Masters group quite 6 months or so ago about, I was at a 50th birthday party, and every woman I spoke to who was either had just turned 50 or was turning 50 had a complaint about their body or had a fear about breast cancer or any ailments in general, about aging. And I had to stop myself at one point and think, okay, I can either get entangled with this, or I can just stop and just be present, or simply just walk away, because I was actually feeling really quite irritated by it all. And that was the second thing. I started to judge that thought process that they were having and at what they were experiencing and what they were saying. So it does all start with us. It really does. I had to change my reaction, my interpretation of what just occurred. I needed to come into myself and be present in my moment. And every time one of the ladies would complain about something, I would say to my body, I love you so much. I just love you so much. And recently I heard someone say that your body is your greatest lover. And I just thought that was the most beautiful way of describing my body. Every single day, I sing to my body and I say, you are my greatest lover. I love every part of you. There's no part I do not love.
That's beautiful.
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 So beautiful. And you know, I think you brought up this really amazing point too. It's about what we engage in. Like, I no longer choose to engage in so many conversations out there that I specifically feel come from lack about physical in any way, and particularly aging. So I love how you found yourself in that situation, and you just made a choice to not engage in it and to really not only not engage to it, but really elevate where you are in your relationship to your body. That was just beautiful.
And it was interesting. It was almost like they were saying, they were giving me the authority just to say that. Does that make sense? Like, they were saying so many terrible things about their body, and it was giving me the opportunity to become aware how much I perhaps don't listen to my body. Mm-hmm. And it was just like, wow, thank you. That was almost like a blessing in itself. Do you know what I mean?
And I think everybody here, all of us Troy, you had you had your head down.
Yeah. Oh, that's all great. And I really appreciate all that. And especially what Ahmet was saying was what I was thinking about as well. As you raise your body, as a group of us, I mean, and a larger and larger group are ascending, the whole ideas have changed then about how we see the body. The meaning changes dramatically, because it's not just the body, its disease goes away. It's not just the body, but stress and resistance and fear goes away. And what we see in our bodies is a result of a 3D life pattern where there's stress, disease, fear. And so we can choose to give it new meaning altogether in the whole idea. And I get very excited, like Mandy was excited about this Anna, grandmother of Jesus. She lived for 700 years. I mean, and she was, you know, and what is it, Mandy, like 600 years before she started, or 500 before she started having children, you know, and it was amazing. It's amazing because she saw it differently as they went through those initiations and rites, and there was that possibility. And what I see happening for me is this regeneration is, you feel it. You feel that your cells are replacing faster, they're regenerating faster. So now the idea is exciting. No longer do we need to look at youth as resisting or fighting something that has to be inevitable, but instead we totally change the reality of our body is meant to be with us as long as we want. And when we choose to let go, we take the final breath and let go without having that transition needed of wrinkles and breakdown of our various organs. So it's going to be a whole different experience. It's us knowing, okay, the energy is for me to let go and release my body for this experience and move on. And it's going to be wonderful instead of all these things associated with aging. So I'm very excited. Like I'm very excited to see what will happen, because I want to change all the definitions, and not be resistant, but just be excited about what it can create.
Yeah, not coming from lack or for if it's wrong or something to fix.
Right.
And excitement
About what we can create with this 5D expansion of our soul, and our soul being more and more embodied, and we're all together feeling this unity with our body and feeling this unity with the people around us. And so you combine this love and this unity and this connection, what can happen to bodies then as a collective? We have not even begun to see it.
Not even scratch the surface.
And the cool thing too about that, Troy, is that we used to always feel that, like I found myself saying many times, and a lot of people around me, you know, if I could just know what I know today, you know, the knowledge that I've accumulated and the life experiences, but then have the body of somebody younger, right? Because it's like, really, would you want to be 30? Because I would think no, because I really want to know and I want to be who I am today. But now to actually have a belief and see that we can actually have that body and do the reverse aging, that's very exciting.
Yeah, I love that, Sharon. That's right. And I can't wait. The fourth part of the series, we're going to talk about some of those ways that we can do that, some techniques and on. Is there a DNA code down there we can download? Anyway, it's going to be exciting to talk about that too. So yeah, great, Sharon. That's perfect. Because we do have choices. We do have choices. So yeah, I used to say that too. Oh, if only I could, but yeah. Fortunately, I feel great. I feel healthy. I feel great. I feel energetic. I've never related to any sense of, I've never related to sense of when things happen in time. People say to me, my father happens to be ill, although by all measurements in the medical world, he should have been passed a couple of years ago, and he keeps going and going. He's not ready to go yet. But everyone, if I say to someone, my father's ill, the first question is, how old is he? Isn't that funny? I find that extremely curious that that's the first, and that just shows me that whole, right now, until people are ready to move to embrace the new consciousness, or they're being enlightened and moving into it, that the general consensus is that, well, age means death, or age means getting old. I mean, it means the body decaying. It means all these things, and I don't believe it has to mean any of that. But why, and if he was 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 80, what difference does it make how it is? I just don't even understand the question anymore. So that's how little I relate to it. So
Can you hear me?
yeah.
I'm sorry, I can't seem to find a raise hand button here. I just
That's
wanted
perfect.
Under reactions.
under reactions. Oh, okay. I just want to say that it really changed for me when I just completely fell in love with myself. And it was a long process because, you know, I was caught up in that aging look or worrying about aging or how I looked. But then over the past few years, and I would say particularly in the past 6 months, it doesn't matter anymore to me. It's like, who wouldn't want to be in this moment, in this place right now? It's so rich that you say, age, what is that? Because the judgment is gone. So you just have to, for me, I had to fall in love with myself. And then the judgment fell away. And that just changed everything.
That sounds perfect. So what are just a little bit, and I think this goes to what Francesca is saying earlier too, but what are just a couple of things you did to kind of change that you started loving yourself? Some of the
it was a lot of the council's wisdom, listening to it and receiving it and practicing it, and which they have.
Do you want to close because people?
Oh, I'm sorry. And they have one perspective on health, and I listened to it like 4 or 5 times, and they talk about tell your body you love it, and that started it, and then I don't even know that I had any particular practices. It just started happening. The love and the joy was just coming and coming. And I think it's part of a whole package. It's part of your whole ascension package. It's not just the aging package. When that whole ascension package happens, these judgments fall away and you come to know yourself on such a deeper level that superficial level just isn't there anymore.
Yeah.
That's been my experience.
So those of you who don't know that are listening, Sarah Landon. So Sarah Landon.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
She channels the council, a group of higher consciousness, and she calls them the channel. I mean the council. So a lot of us are very familiar with them, but I'm not assuming everybody that will listen may not be. So that was great, Diana. I love that.
So I did have something I thought I'd share. I have to admit that while I appreciate all the sentiments about, you know, being in this body for as long as you choose, and in fact, I have received messages about living to 140 and then it changed to 400, and then we'll take it from there. But I still have doubts about it because it's not necessarily something that I have been able to accept fully yet. And I find that where I'm at this point is getting to a balance point between acceptance of what's happening with my body now, which allows me to love myself as I am in this moment right now. And from that point, I think, for me at least, I have to begin there. I have to accept that at this moment, and I'm not complaining, but at this moment, okay, these are getting deeper. And I'm getting little things that I recognize that was on my mom's face, you know, and I kind of like that a little bit. So I am approaching this 140 years with a renewal date for 400 years and so on. with optimism, but I don't feel, because honestly, I had a spiritual teacher about 30 years ago who said the same thing. I'm going to leave with my body. I'm just going to disappear. And she was very, she believed in it wholeheartedly. And yet there was that layer that maybe had to do with the level of consciousness and light and ascension energies that were available at that time. But she passed of cancer. So, I had all the faith in the world that she had the power to do that, because she had her presence and her sovereignty and all of that. But to translate that into overcoming what we think of as the science and the biology and, nature shows us, and all these third dimensional presumptions that we have been taught, that we have seen all around us. There is a new time that we're in, the time of consciousness, as you nicely put it, Sandy, that gives us that opportunity to really explore that. And for those of us who haven't quite gotten there to that level of excitement, as you mentioned, Troy and Mandy also, it's like, I would love to be that excited about it, perhaps because I have this awareness, this story about this friend who had that same passion. I am willing to allow myself to sit where I am with this and do so with the very same things that Blissa was talking about, that Francesca was talking about, to appreciate what you're in, what you're seeing, what you're feeling, and love it, and that's going to be enough for me for now. I don't need to push it until my soul tells me, hey, check this out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's perfect. Sylvia, I'm not there either. I'm not thinking about the 140 years or which is all great. I'm just like being more in the present. But I do like that. I think we're on the precipice of this. Some of us may be a little further along in it, but I think in general, we're all on the precipice of going forward on this and what's next. And it's all going to be occurring and coming along, and we're not there yet. This is the beginning, I think, of these being possibilities for us. And that's why I think the conversation is really important. But I'm with you too. I can't think about right now being 140 years because I have too much lack stuff come up about that. So,
hey, if you
but I
can
know
feel
it's
your
possible.
body umpteen times consciously, you can make as much money as you like, or forget it. We won't have money by then anyway, so it's fine.
Yes, Blissa.
I would say that for me, watching my mom in her aging process and seeing her, her aging process has been primarily like a memory loss. And that really stirred up some thoughts and ideas about aging. I think a lot of the work that I've done in my life really relies on me being sharp and being available. And so I started to really ask for messages about that. And why is this memory loss happening? And the messages that I get relate to being open to really feeling our feelings as they come up, or even if they're old and they're emotions that have been shoved down, when they come up, to fully feel, because the body gives us this opportunity to fully feel. It gives us an opportunity. I mean, we're ascending with our bodies, like Ahmet said, and the body is like our vehicle, right? And so I really have found that along with letting go of those old stories that I might tell, even like I don't remember her name, in Australia was talking about being at the party and everybody's talking about their stories, and they're really reinforcing those stories. They're really reinforcing, whatever it is that they feel a lack of in their bodies. And I think those things are very important in the channel that I, because I was like, okay, well, what is it that's so important? And it's like when we just allow ourselves to really feel, when we fully love and accept ourselves, and when we can retell the stories from an empowered place, we drop the resistance. And that was kind of what I was shown, is it's like, it's resistance that creates more and more of that appearance of aging, the resistance that we just can continue to build in our lives. And also we have to really, like, death, as we come to, I think many of us understand, it's this transition, but we don't actually, like, who we really are doesn't die. Then perhaps we need it, perhaps it's time, and it comes as cancer, or it comes as something else. And although cancer is actually our body in a self-healing process, it may be, usually it either gives us like a whole new lease on life, or it gives us a whole new life, where we completely pass through the doorway and move on to the next. And so I think that part of the aging is not saying that death is like something to be avoided. Death is part of what a human experience entails. And we don't really know when we see a young, youthful person die and we're like, oh, but they had so much potential. We don't really know that. They may have completed their, I take the stance that they've completed what they were here to do in that body. And perhaps I've also gotten channels of information saying that I'm going to live, 140, 150 years maybe. But it's like, it's a lot to really conceptualize that. So it kind of works better for me just to stay present. And I think that's a huge piece throughout, for us as humans. The more present we can be, the more we're just in the now, and we're not really identifying with any of the boxes then.
That's awesome. And I really found it interesting what you said about resistance, because you're right, we have so much resistance and we fall into these stories and so forth. But so you really sort of connected resistance with aging, resistance with effects of aging, such as Alzheimer's, but also resistance to death. So resistance to feelings causes things in aging, and resistance to death, I think, causes you to probably even age more because you're fighting something. Anytime you fight,
Sure,
you're resisting it. So if you're not,
That's the disease too. I mean, that's the creation of disease. Is a lot of it is about resistance, right? And disease enhances or accelerates aging.
so resistance, right? I mean,
Yeah.
new things.
Well, and as far as Alzheimer's goes, my mom passed from Alzheimer's several years ago. And what I heard her say quite often was, some things are not worth remembering. And I know that she had a lot of trauma, and she never did any therapy, even in like a traditional 1960s, 1970s kind of way. So the fact that she got to 89 or 90, whatever it was, I don't recall right now, and coped and moved forward despite having this trauma. But it seemed and felt to me like part of that trade-off was letting go of more than just the memories of the trauma, or in pushing that aside and pushing that away, she pushed away more, like more memories and more memories and more memories. So it became like, oh, is this how you want us to handle things? And so, you know, other pieces also leave. And I find that interesting because it's another way that we sometimes unwittingly talk to ourselves and our bodies. And it follows our instructions to the T.
And we create our own reality, right?
Exactly.
And just what you said, Sylvia, it was almost like what Blissa said too, like she resisted dealing with those feelings then, so they were still so present in her life. So her way to, she resisted by coping still, right? By coping,
by coping skills, by compartmentalizing and locking it away. You know, I know she had enough, she had dealt with enough of it in order to be able to speak about it without a lot of emotion or apparent judgment, but it's unclear how much there was left unhealed. And the fact that this phrase would come up fairly often is like, there's some things that don't need to be remembered or aren't worth remembering or better forgetting and things like that. It's like those are messages we tell ourselves, or some people tell themselves. And in her case, I was able to link those two things together. Whether that's always true, I'm not the one to say.
Well, with my mom, it is that there was a lot of trauma that she didn't deal with as it happened. And it wasn't even necessarily childhood trauma. It was a lot of trauma when I was a child. And I never saw my mom cry or really feel into it. She was always like, you know, stoic and very even keeled.
Mhm.
But then over the years, I saw the resentment building around it. And still, she actually later, around 45, turned to alcohol as a coping mechanism. And then she drank for 20 years pretty heavily and realized that she was losing her memory. But that was a similar, I think that it was, rather than choosing to you know, raise her frequency or to really heal those traumas, she shoved them down. And now she just creates, you know, her memory is, when she reaches back for old memories, she just creates whatever she wants. They're irrelevant to the life that we experienced. And I get, you know, then I realize I have to do my work around that. Like, but that invalidates my trauma. And then it's like, oh, no. I do not need to go there. It's like, I can do my own work. My trauma is, you know, something that I have spent a lot of time working with and healing and seeing what, you know, has been playing out. So it's a great teacher.
Yeah.
You know, there's something about this that's just come to me as this happened. It's just an incredible insight for me. My mother was pretty healthy and she went through her own issues. I mean, she had some pretty tough issues when her marriage and infidelity and all sorts of things. She never really got sick, and she was always healthy, and in her 80s, she's playing tennis, and she never died of a disease. But what was so interesting, I spent the last 5 days with her, and it was her body that just started moaning and going through all this and shaking and then moaning. Her body was saying, now it's my turn to get rid of this. You've not had all of this stuff that you've had to use through therapy. Now it's my turn. And for 4 or 5 days, she did that. And then she passed. I'm just realizing how masterful that was from her body. Their body wanted to let it go so she can have that pass before she leaves and goes to the other side. Wow.
I know.
Awesome.
Well, even
Right.
this that you guys have brought about the resistance and with the parents, I think it's extremely illuminating. And isn't it great that we have choices now and we're living in a time of consciousness? We're living when the fifth dimensions come in, enlightenment's coming in. It's heaven on earth, and that we are aware of this, and that other people are becoming aware more and more all the time, that we do have this opportunity to be able to not resist, to be able to not fight, to be able to deal with things differently and choose a whole different reality for ourselves. That's pretty exciting. So I think we're almost out of time. So does anyone have anything they want to say before we conclude for today and join again next week for part 2?
It's been
Well,
awesome.
yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's been awesome.
Has been.
Too. Yes.
Really good.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you for putting this together and for being
Yes.
living so boldly.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you.
Master.
Thank
Thank you
you all.
everyone for your
Thank you,
shares.
Sandy. Everyone.
Thank
It was
you.
just incredible.